Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, new arrest of local Marines and sailors. How the military says the arrests are part of an ongoing human smuggling case. And he was mistakenly held for nearly a month. A U.S. citizen talks about his experience inside an immigration detention center.
Newland Sierra is a better choice because it brings critically needed housing that benefits our workforce.
A show of support for a controversial development. Why San Diego's former mayor and others want to build thousands of homes in a potential fire zone.
We're just really blessed that in this community, a lot of organizations and partnerships care.
Help for those experiencing homelessness beyond San Diego. See how people are getting help in Chula Vista. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Friday, July 26th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. 3 more service members are under arrest in a human smuggling and drug case. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh has an update on the Marines and sailors who were taken into custody.
Pendleton officials announced Thursday that 16 Marines had been pulled from their formation and arrested. The Navy investigators confirmed Friday that another 2 Marines from the same unit and a sailor attached to the base have also been arrested. All of the arrests stem from 2 other Marines charged with human trafficking in federal court. They were picked up by Border Patrol agents July 3rd near Tecate, California, with 3 undocumented migrants. The federal complaint says the Marines had transported migrants on other occasions and that the migrants paid up to $8,000 to be smuggled into the United States. Those 2 charged in federal court, Lance Corporals Byron Law II and David Salazar Quintero, have been released from federal custody. The Marines say the 2 have since been taken into custody by the military and are being held at the brig at Miramar. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Late this afternoon, the Supreme Court handed President Trump a victory on his border wall project. In a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court is allowing the Trump administration to repurpose military funds for the project. A lower court put a freeze on the money back in May. More than $2 billion will be spent to build replacement walls in Arizona, California, and New Mexico. Guatemala has agreed to help limit the number of asylum seekers coming to the U.S. President Trump says the country is signing on to the Safe Third Country Agreement. It requires asylum seekers who pass through Guatemala to apply for asylum there. The goal is to ease overcrowding at the southern border. Earlier this week, President Trump threatened a travel ban or other penalties if Guatemala didn't do more to ease the flow of asylum seekers. Here in the U.S., a Texas-born high school student was detained for nearly a month by Border Patrol. He says agents refused to believe he was a U.S. citizen. Now a free man, he talked with CNN reporter Nick Valencia about his ordeal.
Francisco Galicia is home at last, but the reminders of his detention are never far away. Sitting in his South Texas home, the 18-year-old American says what he went through should never have happened, even if immigration officials allege he's partly to blame.
Immigration officials say that there was confusion about your status because there was conflicting documents. Do you think that this was about the documents, or do you think that this was about something else?
They thought they were superior. They looked at us with such distaste. I think it was like a certain type of racism.
For 3 weeks, he slept on the concrete with nearly 70 others who were doing the same.
They didn't even treat you like human beings.
No.
He survived off bologna sandwiches and says every 3 to 4 days he was given a wet wipe to clean himself.
You didn't shower at all?
No, for 23 days.
You didn't shower for 23 days?
For 23 days.
For 23 days with a bad diet, I lost nearly 30 pounds.
In his 27 days in custody, Galicia said no one ever believed he was American. At one point, tired of trying to explain himself, he considered self-deporting to Mexico.
They just mess with your mind.
Sí.
How? Explain.
Pues la verdad, amenazándome.
The truth, threatening me that they were going to press charges for falsifying documents, the whole time insulting me that how could I not know where I was from?
This all started on June 27th, when Galicia, along with his brother and 2 friends, left their home in Edinburgh and headed north. They were stopped at a checkpoint in Falfurrias, about 100 miles north of the border, while on their way to Ranger College in Central Texas for a soccer camp. Galicia, who was born in the U.S. but grew up in Mexico, was carrying documents proving he was an American, but he also carried a tourist visa that mistakenly listed his birth country as Mexico. This individual provided conflicting reports regarding status of citizenship after being apprehended. Situations including conflicting reports from the individual and multiple birth certificates can and should take more time to verify. CBP and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement said in a joint statement Wednesday. Galicia thinks border agents would have believed he was American, if not for his broken English.
There are going to be people that watch this interview and say that you live in the United States, you're an American, you should be speaking English. What do you smile? What do you say to those people?
I don't speak English, but I'm going to learn it, and I'll speak it later.
Is this more of a reason to learn English now?
I have to learn it to talk to everyone and everyone so that the next time this happens, they'll believe me.
Somehow, he's able to laugh about his time in custody, which he said ended after media picked up his story. But just a few days removed from detention, he spends a lot of time thinking about those who aren't as lucky.
Our president talks about how there's a lot of bad actors, a lot of people that are here to do harm among those that are coming to this country. But you're telling me you felt more scared being in the presence of the ICE officials and the officials, immigration officials, than you did with the migrants. When you were there, how many of the migrants would you say were here to do harm to the United States?
None wanted to come to do harm. All came in search for a better future.
After being locked up with them, he now considers some of them friends. He keeps a handful of phone numbers on tiny pieces of paper he received from those friends while in the facility. He's calling families in Central America to tell them their loved ones are still alive.
To see the suffering of other people, it made me understand many things. One can live his life here in a certain way while others suffer.
You speak for them now?
Yes. I mean, I try to because they can't talk. I'm like their eyes and ears from their inside.
Walking outside, Galicia says the air to him smells fresher than before. Things look and feel different too, and so does he. Even though he lives on the border, prior to his detention, he never paid attention to the migrant crisis. Now, he's lived it. Nick Valencia, CNN, McAllen, Texas.
We have two stories tonight on San Diego County growth in the years ahead. We start in North County, where voters will be asked to approve building thousands of homes near Escondido. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman tells us how the Newland Sierra project is gaining support.
Supporters of the project rallied here today at the Registrar of Voters, saying it brings much-needed affordably priced homes to the area. But opponents don't buy that, and they say they want to keep the area rural.
Newland Sierra is a better choice because it brings critically needed housing. The benefits are workforce, local businesses, and everyone who calls San Diego County home.
Most of the homes in the development would cost between $500,000 and $900,000, with some near $400,000. Backers of the Newland Sierra project include local fire and sheriff unions, whose members could benefit from the lower-priced homes.
A $400,000 house is attainable for our public safety employees, and that's an important thing, along with school teachers.
Not everyone is in favor of the proposed development located just outside Escondido and San Marcos.
We have a motto in Twin Oaks Valley. It's called Keep Twin Oaks Valley Rural.
The County Board of Supervisors approved the Newland Sierra development last year, but more than 100,000 signatures forced the project onto the 2020 ballot.
There were over 100,000 signatures obtained all across the county using not factual things about this project. And in our mind, this referendum is going to give us an opportunity to talk to the public ourselves.
Opponents of the project say the public has already spoken.
Say the fact that they're here telling us all that 117,000 people were duped into signing a petition is just asinine to me. It's ridiculous.
Newland Sierra developers announced Friday that the project will include 200 affordable housing units for seniors and families. It's estimated millions of dollars will be spent on campaigns for and against the development before voters take it up in March of 2020. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Environmentalists are challenging a plan for a large new development near Chula Vista. Despite county approval, they want to stop it from going up in a fire-prone area. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson says now the project is facing a lawsuit.
The Center for Biological Diversity says the sprawling development would destroy sensitive habitat. It would cause traffic congestion and put people in harm's way if wildfires hit. Now, the lawsuit argues the project also ignores a recent court ruling requiring the project mitigation to happen inside the county. Richard Halsey is with the Chaparral Institute, and he says the proposed development is not fire safe.
The habitat issue is really important, and yes, this development will, again, push people out into the backcountry in areas that are very important for the region's biodiversity. But first and foremost, as far as the Chaparral Institute is concerned, and what everybody should be concerned about, is human safety.
Otay Ranch Village 14 calls for 1,100 homes to be built, as well as some commercial projects. All of that would happen around Lower Otay Lake. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Thanks, Eric. San Diego has one of the largest homeless populations in the nation. It's an issue that's being dealt with countywide. KPBS reporter John Carroll shows us an event to help people experiencing homelessness in Chula Vista.
On the hot asphalt parking lot of the Westside Community Church, help in many ways for people who are homeless. Unsheltered is the preferred term here. Rosie Vasquez founded her South Bay nonprofit Community Through Hope 11 years ago.
We roam around the city of Chula Vista and the South Bay to try and hit all the different areas that are being impacted.
Over the years, she's drawn many supporters to her cause, and here they were in this parking lot, providing all sorts of help to people who desperately need it. Clothing, books, help with finding a job, dental services, testing for HIV. Along with all the services here that probably wouldn't surprise you, there is one that might. The opportunity to take a shower for folks who don't get that opportunity very often.
It's the only time they get to take a shower. It's the only time anyone engages with them, gives them a little bit of dignity.
In addition to providing needed services, there's something else going on here: affirmation and love.
Where they're comfortable, they can socialize with their friends, and most importantly, see that the community cares.
And I'm just blessed today that I'm a different person and I got a job, getting my apartment, and that I have people that cares and loves me.
Mary Foster used to be a client of Community Through Hope. Now she's here to help others.
It does make me feel good that I could go out there and tell somebody where I was at.
When we think of people who are homeless, the unsheltered, Chula Vista doesn't usually come to mind. But there are plenty of people in the county's second largest city that need help. And because of the volunteers here, they're getting it. John Carroll, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, securing the vote. A U.S. Senate report outlines foreign attempts to influence the 2016 election and reviews threats that remain for 2020. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
East County is the focus for the latest in our KPBS series, Where I Come From. In the weeks ahead, we'll look at the communities of Imperial Beach and Fallbrook. Tonight, we have this story from El Cajon, where people talk about the identity of their city.
In Spanish, El Cajon means the box or the drawer, so we just started calling it the box. And from then on, we started throwing up the box. So everywhere we went, it was the box. So when I went to school in Montana, I went to school in Washington, anytime we were taking pictures, I was throwing up the box.
I feel like people who don't live here may think that it's a bit more, it's not as fancy, it's not as classy, and I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think it's less snobby.
Being from El Cajon, being from this far East County is actually what made me the person I am today. It gave me, I think, a better work ethic. It made me more open to seeing different kinds of people and accepting it.
At El Cajon Valley High School, we played together on the same football team, and he's black, I'm Arab. Our other close friend, Eric, is Mexican. My other very close friend, Digger, is white.
I still got friends from when I was in like 5th and 6th grade. And just the growth, and we all are parents now, and being able to experience like the differences, but being cool with it.
I think it's allowed me to be more diverse. I grew up in Philadelphia, and it was very segmented, right? The Italians were in this part, and then the African Americans were in this part of the city.
Not only has growing up in El Cajon made me more aware of the different cultures and types of people that there are, I know that nothing is handed to me, and that I'm proud to say that, like, I came from a group of people that all worked really hard every day, and they all kind of wanted the same things, and they almost maybe worked together to achieve those.
It was almost like a reverse love. Like, El Cajon was loving me, and in turn, I just had to love it back.
I think people need to know that El Cajon is not just Cowpoke City.
We'd like to hear what you think about our series, Where I Come From. Go to KPBS's Facebook page and join the conversation. In some parts of San Diego today, to say it was hot is an understatement, and the heat is going to stick around through the weekend. Dajia Swad has tonight's forecast.
Happy Friday. We haven't been talking about a lot of precipitation here across Southern California, but most of that moisture has been back towards our east through the Four Corners as we have that high pressure influencing that moisture being drawn in. Now, what we will see is high pressure building across California. So some areas are talking very extreme heat, but not so much here in San Diego itself. As we head into the deserts, we'll be looking at some pretty hot conditions, but even those temperatures start to ease as we move into the extended forecast. So I'm going to show you some of our futurecast here for tonight. Once again, wet weather back towards our east across portions of Colorado as well as New Mexico. But as we continue through your Saturday morning, what we will notice for the California coastline is a chance for the clouds to move on in. For tonight, your dew points, they're pretty up there. You're looking at dew point temperatures in the upper 60s for San Diego, 67 in Phoenix. So it's just not going to be hot, but also remaining on the sticky side for tonight. You'll be looking at a low at 70, and fog also going to be noticeable, as we saw in that futurecast, clouds moving closer inland to, well, at least to the coastal areas, I should say. 67 in Oceanside, cooling down to 84 tonight in Borrego Springs and 64 in Mount Laguna. We move into your Saturday. Hot conditions continue to build across portions of the desert southwest. If you're out towards, or headed rather, to Colorado as well as New Mexico, well, there still will be a chance for some thunderstorm activity. We remain on the dry side in Borrego Springs with a high at 113 degrees, 84 in Mount Laguna and 81 in Oceanside, topping off at 79 here in San Diego with some morning clouds possible, but really a sunny day. We'll remain on the dry side for early week here across San Diego County as we take you through your 5-day outlooks. Highs remaining in the lower 80s and upper 70s at the coast. We will start to notice a bit more cloud cover into next week. We will be on the warm side through this weekend in inland areas, lower 90s at least through Monday, and then dropping back into the 80s with a bit more cloud cover into your Tuesday and Wednesday deserts. As I mentioned, going to be very hot Saturday and Sunday. Then temperatures will be decreasing for early next week, and we'll be topping off in the 80s for your weekend in the mountains. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your meteorologist, Dajia Swad. Back to you.
T-Mobile is a big step closer to finalizing its takeover of Sprint. Today, the Department of Justice granted its approval. The two companies tried to merge a few years ago, but it was blocked by the Obama administration. It's a $26 billion deal. The companies say teaming up will help them compete with Verizon and AT&T as the industry develops 5G technology. Critics say the merger could lead to higher consumer prices and job cuts. It's time for the Friday Business Report, and joining the conversation is Miro Kopik with Bottom Line Marketing and SDSU. Welcome.
Thanks, Ebony.
So, Miro, big news coming out of the Department of Justice. Just this week, the DOJ announced that it's going to be reviewing the practices of some of the top online platforms. It didn't name names, but soon after, the share of Facebook and Amazon went down. So could these online platforms, Miro, possibly be at risk of being broken up?
You know, this is a big development because up to now, the Federal Trade Commission has been involved in all kinds of complaints regarding these online platforms. So looking at search or social media or online retail. So it's Google, Facebook, Amazon, even Apple's been thrown in the mix. And the issue is for consumers, the Justice Department is saying is these firms have gotten potentially too large and they are not doing things on behalf of consumers. And when that happens, the Federal Trade Commission makes sure they can fine companies. And as we know, last week, Facebook had fined $5 billion from the FTC and are requiring Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO, to certify every quarter that there's privacy policies in place that are satisfactory to the FTC. And the reason is Facebook, for example, has had some major issues. They've had the Russian ads during the elections that cause a lot of confusion amongst consumers. The Cambridge Analytica third-party apps that are using data from Facebook to do other things for consumers. One of their early co-founders with Mark Zuckerberg is a guy named Chris Hughes. He's working with two academics that are actually working with the FTC and the Department of Justice, building a case for breaking of Facebook, because when Facebook bought WhatsApp and Instagram, they took a lot of competitors out of the market. So now Facebook monopolizes all of this. And the question is it for the good of the consumer or not?
So this is something we will be following closely.
Very closely.
So next up, California has reached an $18.7 million deal with Equifax. This is in regards to a lawsuit regarding a data breach that dates back to 2017, which means now there's millions of Californians who could potentially get a payout. So how significant is this settlement?
It's a huge settlement because actually the whole settlement is worth potentially $700 million, and it covers 48 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the federal government. So $425 million overall is going to consumers, of which 15 million consumers in California are affected. So the data breach that you're talking about happened a couple of years ago, and at Equifax, and what they found is that people's names, addresses, birth dates, social security numbers were taken. A lot of people had fraud committed against them, had their identities stolen, and there was a lot of immediate remedies that were done. But what this judgment does is allow you to reclaim the cost of credit monitoring or identity monitoring services. It allows you to get back some of the time that you took. So, for example, if up to 20 hours, you could get paid $25 an hour and get $500 back. If you got money stolen, up to $20,000. And if you did nothing and you want to be able to participate in the settlement, you as a consumer have the right for a free credit report from Equifax for the next 7 years, and that's a $12 to $15 value.
Well, finally, some major automakers have agreed to sign an agreement with the state of California to meet higher emissions standards. This despite the Trump administration's efforts to roll back standards. So what does this mean, Muriel, for the car consumer?
Well, it's a kind of a wait and see for the auto consumer right now, but it's huge news for California and the 17 states that are suing the EPA against this rollback of the mile per gallon standard that was set in under the Obama administration in 2012. At that point, the Obama administration said by 2024, the average miles per gallon per car should be 54 miles per gallon. The new standard that was agreed upon between Honda, BMW, VW, and Ford is 50 miles per gallon by 2026. The Trump administration has been pushing 37 miles per gallon because the minute the Trump administration came in, a few automakers lobbied to kind of pull that back. The big win for these four automakers, they represent 30% of the car market share worldwide. They wouldn't agree to this unless they could produce a car that would be cost competitive. CO2 emissions, the biggest part of the CO2 emissions problem for climate change is transportation. So if these automakers are on the side of making the environment better, this is really important. And the last thing, California has benefited from this because if you go back in the 80s and the 90s, the number of pollution days in California were 300 out of 365 days a year. Because of the new standards, California's air is much better.
That wraps it up for this week's Friday Business Report. Thanks so much, Muriel.
Thanks, Ebony.
Turmoil continues at San Diego's regional planning agency with a staffing shakeup. Southern California beaches are disappearing, but there's a local effort to save the sand. And the bold 500-foot tower proposed for Seaport Village. Join us for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
For his ninth film, Quentin Tarantino turns to 1969 to deliver Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. KPBS cinema junkie Beth Accomando says it might not be what audiences expect, but it doesn't disappoint.
Hollywood in 1969 was a time of change. Studios were being challenged by independent filmmaking, and old school stars were being replaced by young blood.
All right, what's the matter, partner? It's official, old buddy. Well, it has been.
And August of 1969 recalls the time when Sharon Tate and her friends were brutally murdered by the Manson family. But how Quentin Tarantino chooses to let all this play out is just one of the surprises of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The film opens by introducing us to Rick Dalton, an aging Western star. But it's his stunt double Cliff, played with golden boy charisma by Brad Pitt, that gets our attention.
Still here.
Tarantino seems in awe of stunt people, even if he thinks they might harbor shady past. He also loves Hollywood and all it represents. He revels in how a film is made and celebrates both the magic and the sleaze. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is Tarantino's most linear and least flamboyant film, but it's also his most grown up since Jackie Brown. It weaves an oddly bittersweet tale of Hollywood as a place where dreams can come true, careers can crash and burn, people can be resurrected, and history can even be rewritten. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
That was the best acting I've ever.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.